let's talk about Nigeria. It's one of the most religious countries on earth. It's also rated as one of the most corrupt. So what's going on there? In this explainer, we're diving right into that paradox, exploring how piety and power have become so dangerously entangled. This quote right here gets to the absolute heart of the problem. How can a nation so defined by its deep faith also struggle so intensely with corruption? We're going to break down how this isn't just some weird coincidence. It's actually a system, and it's playing out inside the country's most powerful religious institutions. So here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the structures that actually allow this paradox to exist. Then we'll dive into some pretty explosive real-world cases, see the crisis of credibility it's causing from the inside, and finally, take a look at the ongoing fight for accountability. Okay, so this whole story, this paradox, it really centers on two of Nigeria's most powerful Christian organizations, the Christian Association of Nigeria, you'll hear it called CAN, and the Pentecostal Fellowship of Nigeria, or PFN. Now, to really get a handle on the scandals we're about to cover, you first have to understand how they're built.
Yeah, because the very design of these organizations, well, that's what creates these unique soft spots for corruption. So how exactly are they set up, and where are the cracks?
Okay, so what you're looking at here are two totally different models of power, and each one has its own Achilles heel. On one side, you've got CAN, a big bureaucratic umbrella group. Its big vulnerability? Politics, state-level bribery. On the other side is PFN, a network of individual ministries led by founders who have pretty much absolute control. Here, the risk is way more internal. We're talking embezzlement and direct exploitation of followers. Two different structures, two very different pathways for corruption to creep in.
Now, what's fueling this whole system, especially inside the PFN? It's something called the prosperity gospel. And look, it's more than just a belief system. It's a full-on economic engine that says wealth is a sign of God's favor. And that creates this massive blind spot, right? If a huge donation just shows up, it's seen as a blessing from God, not something you should question, even if that money is seriously dirty. And a key part of this whole machine is something called seed sowing, this idea that big donations will trigger a massive return from God. So here's the billion-dollar question. What happens when some corrupt official sows a seed with millions in stolen public money? See, they're not just donating. They are, in effect, buying spiritual protection for their crimes. It's like they're laundering their reputation and their cash all at the same time, right through the church.
All right, now let's get into some of the really high-stakes cases where that line between the church and the state just completely dissolved. $9.3 million in cash. Just let that sink in for a second. This number sent absolute shockwaves through Nigeria, and it exposed a startling connection between the country's highest religious leadership and its national security apparatus. Because back in 2014, authorities in South Africa found all that cash stuffed into 3 suitcases on a private jet. And whose jet was it? It belonged to the president of the Christian Association of Nigeria at the time. The official story? Oh, it was for a totally legitimate arms deal to fight Boko Haram. But the method? I mean, using a top religious leader's private jet to smuggle stacks of cash, that is anything but legitimate. And this chart really just breaks down how messy and blurry all the lines got. I mean, look at this cast of characters. The CAN president owned the plane, a private company was leasing it, an Israeli guy was the courier holding the cash, and the whole operation was greenlit by Nigeria's own national security advisor. The church wasn't just kind of involved, it was being used as a tool of the state, plain and simple. All right, the next case file involves an even crazier amount of money, 7 billion naira. We're talking tens of millions of US dollars. But this time, it wasn't about guns, it was all about winning an election. So the allegation here was that the ruling political party paid this massive sum directly to pastors. And what for? To use their pulpits for a political hit job. We're talking a full-on disinformation campaign to paint their main rival as some kind of religious extremist. This wasn't just about buying votes, it was about weaponizing faith itself. Yeah, there's actually a name for this tactic. It's called emotional corruption. It's when leaders twist people's genuine faith and their deepest fears, in this case, the fear of persecution, to score a political victory. It turns the pulpit from a place of worship into a propaganda machine. So you can start to see two really clear patterns of corruption taking shape here. On one hand, you have these massive state-level operations like the arms deal, but on the other, you've got straight-up internal mismanagement.
A classic example is the scandal where millions donated by the American preacher Benny Hinn for a big crusade just, poof, vanished. That one ended with some local church officials getting quietly suspended. So it's really no surprise that years of these kinds of scandals have created a massive crisis of credibility. It's causing some major fractures inside these organizations. I mean, the Pentecostal Fellowship of Nigeria, the PFN, is a prime example of this internal chaos. We're talking about everything from allegations of financial misconduct and rigged internal elections to leaders actively blocking rival ministries and just a total failure to handle these high-profile sexual abuse scandals. It paints a picture of an institution that is really, really struggling. And you don't have to take my word for it. A voice from inside the movement, Reverend Isaac Omeline, he put it so bluntly. He called the internal environment irresponsible and said the infighting is lethal to the credibility of the faith. I mean, that's a powerful cry for help, coming from the inside.
Okay, so what happens when the government actually tries to step in and bring in some basic oversight? Well, let's just say the fight for accountability is met with some seriously powerful, organized resistance. The key law here is the Companies and Allied Matters Act of 2020, or CAMA for short. And its goal was pretty simple: bring some basic financial transparency to all nonprofits, including churches. You know, simple stuff like requiring audited returns.
But look at how the leadership framed it. Instead of a simple move toward accountability, they sold it to their followers as an attack, a covert operation by the state designed to emasculate the church. By painting regulation as persecution, they were able to get their followers to fight against any attempted oversight. It's a classic move. And we have to remember, this isn't just some internal church drama. The real-world cost for everyday Nigerians is devastating. When public funds get diverted, schools don't get built, hospitals can't get supplies. When security funds are misused, the entire nation is less safe. And maybe most importantly, when the church itself is compromised, it starts to normalize the very corruption it's supposed to be fighting against. It just chips away at the country's moral fabric.
So what are the big takeaways here? First, these religious bodies aren't just spiritual groups. They are powerful political and economic forces. Second, that prosperity theology we talked about, it can provide the perfect moral cover for some really shady financial dealings. Third, that line between church and state has been blurred to a seriously dangerous degree. And finally, that fierce resistance to any kind of regulation is the single biggest roadblock to real reform. And all of this leaves us with one final, and I think really vital question. It goes way beyond just money or politics. When the very institutions that are meant to be a nation's moral compass become tools of power, what is the ultimate cost to that nation's soul?